CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
You are listening to a podcast by a guy that shouldn't have a podcast. It's Tim Graham and Friends.
It's Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. And some interesting goings on in local sports, even though this is supposed to be the downtime. Of course, the NHL coming off of its draft weekend and the opening of free agency. Unfortunately for Sabres fans, not much to talk about in terms of the moves that I think they were hoping would get made, or the big splash, or the cataclysmic change. It's been a little bit more of a gravitation towards more defense, more physical play with their signings, and the J.J. Peterka trade. Bowen Byram still waiting. We'll get to that. We're also going to be joined in a little bit by Joe Mesi, former number one heavyweight contender. And the reason I reached out to Joe yesterday or the day before is, I mean, Joe and I have watched some fights together, and one of the more recent ones that we did watch was Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. And we're kind of just fascinated by the Jake Paul phenomenon. And lo and behold, Jake Paul is now ranked. He has a world ranking, the WBA. It's a legitimate organization, one of the biggest and the oldest. The WBA now has Jake Paul ranked at cruiserweight. And
is that more legitimate than us being ranked as the 91st sports podcast or whatever?
No, well, we're going to get into that. Joe understands rankings. You know, he played that game. He knows the politics of it. And of course, we'll talk about his career and what he's up to now. But Joe's going to join us. The Jake Paul was just an excuse. You know, we've been talking about having Joe Mesi on the podcast. You and I have, and Joe and I have, for a long, long time. And we were both guests on a Sal Capaccio podcast a few months back. That was fun. And so anyway, we're going to talk today. But real quick, well, maybe not real quick. I mean, we'll talk about it for as long as we want. But before we get to those things, there's an update on the pro soccer stadium in Buffalo. And the reason I want to make a point is because we did a whole episode on kind of the ridiculousness of this site and the search and the declarations and how it's kind of ridiculous, how it's folly. Some of these celebratory news conferences that they found a site for the new pro soccer stadium. Well, they've already abandoned it. The Elk and Lee Roads area down there by the powerhouse, that was supposed to be the site. They were proud of it, had a big news conference, and PVC Chemicals nearby was like, we don't want you as a neighbor. And we were talking on the podcast about why fans would want to go there. It smells funny. It's not the best. I mean, is it safe? All the different things that they would have to go through, from discovery, environmental things, you know, whatever all their things that they're going to do down there. And I know that there's, you know, there already is a, you know, fields, and they do high school events down there. I know that, but bringing people down as fans, you want to generate or cultivate season ticket holders for this pro soccer team, all those things. It just seemed like a strange place to put it. They've seemed to have come around to the fact that it's not going to work, and they are now back to the drawing board regarding sites for this pro soccer stadium. And Jonah, I know that you've written some stories about it, and you've been following it. And you know that area from covering amateur sports in Western New York for so long. You've been down there. What's just your thoughts on this development?
Well, my immediate thoughts is this is the latest in the saga of Bass Pro Soccer, the team and that I'm dubious will ever play a game and will ever build a stadium. Yeah, the stadium should not have been built on this Madai Field property. There's all sorts of problems with that and wasn't, I think, exciting. I mean, the people behind the soccer team and the investors conveyed excitement, but I don't think it generated much excitement from local sports fans and local soccer fans that this is where they were going to play their games. And there was a lot of disappointment that they wouldn't be playing downtown, and the proposed site in the Buffalo News parking lot, the old Buffalo News parking lot behind the HSBC, the old HSBC atrium. I think if this revives that site as a potential stadium location, this is good. And I know the owners really wanted to start this team in 2026 because it's a World Cup year, but I don't really see why that needs to be the case. And, if it takes another year to get this in the right property and build the stadium downtown, that's perfectly fine. Now, if you've been following the trends in real estate with Douglas Jamal and abandoning the Richardson Hotel and not building proposed projects and waiting things out, that doesn't portend very well towards that downtown stadium getting built in time for a 2027 season. There's some talk that there's now alternative sites being looked at within the city, but just outside downtown is what has been said. I'm not really sure where that is. We'll see. But it's disappointing that, everything's up in the air now. We don't know if this team's ever going to play or the stadium's ever going to get built, but it could be promising if it does lead to the downtown site that I think a lot of people were excited about, and I think is the best solution here.
When they announced that they had picked the site for this stadium down on Elk and Lee Streets, I think that you said there was not much excitement. I agree. And what excitement there was pertained to the fact that they just gotten one step closer. I think it wasn't the location. People were not into this location at all. And I know there was cost factor to it. It was supposed to be cheaper. It was easier to get started. They had all the different bullet points of why they were choosing this instead of Scott Street by the old Buffalo News building over there, nestled in between what would be the old Buffalo News building and the old HSBC atrium, that parking lot area. And I don't know, can they revisit it? You mentioned Jamal, and I think it's not just downtown. I think we're seeing it with the various updates that we hear around the stadium, the new Bill Stadium out in Orchard Park, regarding development and zoning, and the appetite just isn't there for developers to come in and build that area around the stadium yet. They thought people would be jockeying for all these parcels so they can build hotels and new restaurants and all these different things that you want to have around a stadium. They've tried to model it after Patriot Place in Foxborough or all these Wrigleyville. They've had these big grandiose plans about what is going to happen around the stadium, and almost like a little village is going to pop up that would make the NFL draft that much more alluring, or all the different things that people have in mind. And now we're hearing it's being scaled back. Orchard Park doesn't want to do 4-story buildings there, which makes hotels tough to do. The everything going on geopolitically, people just don't have the money. There's volatility, the concept of, interest rates and all the different things that go into major projects. Everybody's waiting. They're waiting for the, things to tamp down tariffs, build your supplies, dealing with the border. A lot of work gets done through Canada on these major projects. And there's a animosity at the border there between Canadians and Americans because of the tariff and threats to sovereignty and annexation. And it's just it's a story I've been working on. I've been doing that story for a little while, so I happen to know a bit about it. But yeah, the volatility just is not good for development right now, and I don't think it's just restricted to downtown. So it is Yeah, it's a strange time to be looking to build a soccer stadium. Now I know that obviously anybody who's driven down Abbott Road, or you don't even have to drive down Abbott Road. You get on the 219 or even off the thruway in some places, you can see the stadium being built. You don't have to go down there to see it. You can see from a distance that this I don't want to say a monstrosity, that's a negative word, but this colossus of a building is coming up. You don't need all that for a soccer stadium. I mean, this is a quick build. You've seen even you drive past, as I have, a stadium like you do in Columbus, where their MLS team plays, and you can see from the outside of the skeleton looking in, these soccer stadiums are pretty basic. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles and all the encasings and all that stuff. So
Well,
they're
in
relatively easy to build.
in this case, what is proposed, and I think it still will be if it's ever built, is something called a modular stadium. It's going to be built elsewhere and shipped to Buffalo, Western New York, and put together on site. So it's not going to be, you're right, it's going to be a much smaller project, but it's also not going to be a local construction site. It's going to be well, I guess you're going to construct it from the pieces that get shipped in. And I thought that led to some potential of building the stadium or constructing the stadium on its original site, in the powerhouse property in the Valley, South Buffalo, and then maybe eventually moving it downtown in a year or two if that was allowed, because I think technologically it could happen. And now perhaps that could still be done, although they're saying that it's not going to be, they're not going to play in 2026, but maybe they could find a temporary site to put this stadium up for 1 or 2 seasons. I don't really understand why they couldn't start this team and play at UB or Buff State for a year or two while they figure out their stadium. I've been told that it's probably a rule or a desire by the league to not expand into Buffalo without a new stadium, and the modular stadium technology that they're using is probably part of the deal.
Yeah, you
But
don't
this
want to get
isn't
into a situation where if it doesn't come to fruition, then you have to relocate a team, and it looks bad for the league. It looks, they want some assurances.
right. Yeah, but it could put some pressure on actually having to build the stadium if the team's already there and already playing, and then say, well, this was a temporary solution of playing at the local college or somewhere else.
Getting the stadium built is almost like a test for your ownership being worthwhile. If you can get this stadium built, then you're a worthy owner in our league. And if you can't, well, then you make us look bad, and maybe it wasn't meant to be. Real quick,
And
you
there's been
mentioned
a lot of insistence from the start that this team is coming. This team is playing. It will happen. The stadium is being built. The money is there. The investors are there. But there's been a lack of actual things happening, shovels in the ground and deals being struck to do anything. And now this is the latest step that's why I call it Bass Pro Soccer, because I really don't think it's going to happen. I'd like to see it happen, and I'm hopeful that it does. I'm sorry to be so cynical and pessimistic about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. And we're seeing a lot of this with development. I understand you kind of laid out why, and it's big business and there's geopolitical factors and reasons like that. But I'm tired of reading about and seeing renderings for all these projects and multi-use developments that are going to happen, and then they
how
don't
about that
happen.
big golf palace they were going to put down on the water, right? Like
Yeah, well, there's a proposed one for this area by the powerhouse that's supposedly going to
right.
happen, but they haven't started building yet. Or what they were going to do at the Boulevard Mall, and now it's sitting there vacant. And
Freezer
all
Queen.
sorts of different things downtown that have been proposed, and now they're just sitting on the land. Or Sinatra has things half built, and he's waiting for more money. And it's like, do or do not. Build these things and develop these properties, or don't. But don't tell us what you're going to do, and then years later do nothing and make excuses or tell us why it didn't happen. Develop or don't develop.
You mentioned it real. I want to just kind of pick into it a little bit. You called it the Valley, which is something that we're hearing lately.
That's what I've been reading and what they've been told is that area. It's, this soccer site is the first I've heard this mentioned as the Valley.
So you're a
we had a
North.
Valley.
You're from the North Towns. I'm from Cleveland, but neither of us have ever heard the Valley before. It's reminiscent of when I had a friend of the show, Scooter Bertino from Turner Sports, reached out to me a couple of years ago during the big ad campaign. I think it was Nike. And he said, did they ever call Cleveland the land? And I was like, no, I never heard that. And then all of a sudden it was just the land. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's always been that. No, it was never that.
No.
So
I think
anyway,
that was
now
a
it's the
Nike
valley
thing,
down there,
right?
whatever
Nike
that
LeBron.
is. That's it's South Buffalo. Is that South
Yeah,
Buffalo?
it's South Buffalo. I guess it's kind of close to Kaisertown,
The valley.
that
Maybe they're
type
just trying
area.
to brand it that way to make it seem like a place to go to develop and build things. The valley.
Well, maybe we didn't know it was called the Valley because there really wasn't much down there. It was factories and undeveloped land, and now uh, we're finding out. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really look like it's much lower than there's no mountains around it, so I don't know why it's a valley, but it is.
Maybe that's why there's not a lot of residential stuff. If it's the valley, maybe it floods. We
Yeah.
got to get to it because Joe Mesi is going to be joining us in a little bit. We got to talk Sabres. Um, Jonah, you've been covering it. I've been working on some NFL stuff before I go on vacation or take some my downtime before Bill's training camp. So I've been following it closely as I can through the media, but I haven't been down there in the news conferences like you have with Kevin Adams. I don't know. Do you have a 30,000-foot view on what they've been doing for the past week and or what they haven't been able to accomplish? And
Yeah.
I think I sense from at least through social media and talking to fans, I've had a couple of little wingdings in the last few days, being out talking to people. People come up to me and they're not happy.
Right. It's a continuation, starting with the JJ Peterka trade and into their underwhelming haul in free agency so far and what they may or may not do with Bowen Byram or things that Kevin Adams has said about how the Sabres are handling that situation of the Sabres not servicing the fans, not delivering what the fan base wants to see or generating any excitement or matching the level of desperation to do everything that's possible to maximize this team's ability to make the playoffs right away. The Sabres are still taking a cautious, patient, prudent approach to building the roster and not making the big move that maybe they can't make. Maybe they can't. They seem to have trouble recruiting free agents to come here, big time free agents and take their money. They can't get players with no trade clauses to agree to be traded here. They can't execute the signings that need to be done, and they couldn't get JJ Peterka to want to re-sign here. But with that said, they might be making prudent hockey moves to actually make this team slightly more competitive and more able to make the playoffs. I mean, they have been a offensively talented but young and irresponsible and a team that's lacked toughness and grit and physicality and defensive pieces that they needed. And JJ Peterka brought back the type of defenseman, right shot defenseman, big Michael Kesselring that they need. A bottom six forward in Josh Doan that might be useful. And Bowen Byram, we'll see what happens, but he could also net a player or two. It seems like Kevin Adams wants a forward and a defenseman in a trade for him if they do trade him. And maybe with all that, the Sabres do ultimately land on the type of roster and the playing style with Lindy Rudd coaching them that puts them in the playoffs. Because having the young and talented, speed-oriented, skill-oriented team that looked really promising on paper and was probably really fun with the play on a video game didn't get them in the playoffs. So maybe having the less exciting team, but the more playoff caliber hockey team is where they're going.
Yeah, it could just be, I mean, that's the optimist view is that these are the tweaks that need to be made going a more defense. This is a team that can score goals, so we don't necessarily need to worry as much about that. The goals will come. Now we're better defensively. But it was a little bit of the same mentality last year of if all we need to do is fix our fourth line, work the bottom of our roster. We just need to tweak. Obviously didn't work. Two of those guys are gone already. So they lasted a year since they've been shipped out, that re-overhauled and much heralded fourth line. What do we hear more about this fourth line and how it was going to make a big difference, or the video scoreboard and the new roof, all these little patchwork things that get done that really don't make a difference to the product. So yeah, you could look at it as an optimist and say, okay, this is the reorganization, the revamping. that needs to be done, just a little bit of changing the direction a bit, or it's just organizing the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's just shuffling guys around.
Right. And I think a lot of this is being forced upon them. They're doing what they can do and not doing what they're unable to do. I think if you want to be hopeful or optimistic, you have to hope that Lindy Ruff and now Jarmo Kekalainen know what they're doing, or at least know how to properly analyze this situation, and that the moves they're making are building this club in the image of what Lindy Ruff thinks they need to be to make the playoffs. And I don't believe that Lindy Ruff was a big JJ Peterka fan. He was very measured in his praise whenever he was asked about him last year. He played him mostly on the second line, not the first line. And I do think Lindy Ruff really wanted certain types of defensive players and players who knew how to defend and be responsible in the way that he wants them to do. And I would have to think, we haven't heard from Lindy Ruff since the end of the season. I would have to think that he is in favor of the moves that have been made and the moves that haven't been made, and isn't disappointed that they didn't make a major top six forward signing, and does want these bigger players, but more fringe signings to fill out the defense in the fourth line, and that Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch and hopefully a revived Jack Quinn and Zach Benson can provide the top line scoring that they need. And Josh Norris, they need him to stay healthy. I do think Lindy Ruff was in favor of that trade, and we haven't seen yet whether that is going to pay off, but that's a big thing with the Sabres next year. Josh Norris, he's probably going to be their top line center, and can he be better than Dylan Cousins was, and can he fill in that role? Because Lindy Ruff moved Tage Thompson to the wing. If all that works out, there's a lot of ifs, but I think Lindy Ruff knows what it takes to win, we think, and Jarmo Kekalainen seems to know maybe what it takes to win. And if they're all in agreement that these are the right moves for the Sabres, or they're all in lockstep together, then I think Sabres fans can maybe hopefully. The Sabres have no credibility as an organization that they know what they're doing, but these individuals maybe have some credibility. And if you want to believe in them, that's, I think, the one selling point.
Lindy Ruff did admit throughout the course of the season that it took him a little longer than he thought to learn the roster. So if you think about how he joined heading into last season, to have that concerted effort of these are the things we want to do, and whether they felt they accomplished them or not. But let's say they did. Let's say they did accomplish what they wanted. They just wanted to do what they did on the fourth line, and they with checking and whatever. But he still is. When you're saying it took longer to learn than you thought, you're admitting that we didn't do everything we could have, or I would have done things differently had I known a little more about this player, or how this works in our system, or what we have coming up out of Rochester. So another year of a smart hockey man. Whether there are some people who think the game maybe is passed Lindy Ruff by, he is the all-time winningest coach in NHL history without a Stanley Cup. So he's had success, but he's also on the back nine of his career. That but maybe that extra year of knowledge does buttress these moves, give them with a little more conviction within the organization, or just be truer to be more accurate and effective. But yeah, it's way past the I'll believe it when I see it with this organization, and it's been in that position for years. And I said it when they named Kevin Adams as the general manager and Don Granato was the head coach. I said then, it almost was, but it then fell apart. But I said, if this works, it'll be a miracle. I've been on record with that as soon as it happened throughout. I even told that. I said that to Don Granato and Kevin Adams at a it was a little gathering they did for the media after the season, in which they almost made the playoffs. And I said it looks like I was wrong, but then looks like I was right. I mean, turns out I was right, but I was almost wrong. But yeah, it would have had to have been a miracle. A guy with no GM experience and a guy with no NHL head coaching experience, and a staff that had never been to the playoffs in the NHL. His whole staff, it was Don Granato's staff, which is now essentially Lindy Ruff's staff. Joe Mesi's joining us. But anyway, maybe the goaltending is another issue. I mean, I think that the fans really see a glaring need. Devin Levi, as excited as you may be, or everybody was, to me, some of that is the mentality that you have in Buffalo of the football fan bleeding over into the hockey fan, that when you draft a guy, all right, giddy up, here we go. Well, no, you know how it is in hockey. You don't see this guy for 3 years, 4 years, and especially with a goaltender. The idea that Devin Levi began his career in the NHL is laughable. And now you're looking at somebody who might make it in the NHL, but just a couple of years ago, he was the future, capital T, capital F. Anywho, all right, so we need to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Joe Mesi. Thank you for watching/listening. And please favorite, comment, subscribe to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs, and Business Consultants.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
And now, back to the man who's never afraid to throw virtual hands, the social media samurai, the tyrant of Twitter, the keyboard snatcher of souls, Tim Graham and Friends.
Welcome back to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CT. It is called Tim Graham and Friends. I just choked on it a little bit there. Brought to you by CTBK, CPAs, and Business Consultants. And usually we call the Fs on here, the TGAF, the Friends. And I'm actually can feel the blood rushing to my face. I'm probably blushing because the concept of this a few years ago would have been laughable, I think. We've talked about it. We had it out. Well, we didn't have it out like a fight, but we have in person a few times too. I think we've both grown since those days. But I think that especially the casual fan or who doesn't maybe know how Joe and I even interacted back in those days would find it a little stunning that Joe Mesi is at least for the next 20 minutes an F on Tim Graham and Friends. Joe, thanks for doing this.
You got it, Tim. That's my pleasure. I want to surprise you. My brother Tom is coming. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, Tom's.
Now, all right. Tom was the guy I was afraid of. Tom was the guy that if I were to come home, now I used to live in Tonawanda, that one of the days I was going to come home and find a cinder block through my front window, and it would not have been from Joe or Jack Mesi. I would have said, I think I know who did this. It's a joke.
Tom is not here, and he also has grown like I have. And
Tom and I had a great moment at the Buffalo Boxing Hall of Fame dinner that you were at. And Tom, I mean, it was a little uneasy because you guys were in the audience, and we hadn't really had our kumbaya moment. But I said some things that I meant, and I said it because you were there, not to the crowd. It was for you. And I thought maybe your dad was even going to be there. And I said them publicly because I wanted to and felt I needed to. And that was my favorite point of that night, was Tom coming up to me and giving me he was crying, and he said, you know, I think it was fuck the past, I think was what he said. And, or something to that effect. And gave me a big hug, and that was that. And that's
great. Tom has grown, you know, and Tom doesn't even want to talk about boxing, not the sport, not me, not anything about. A lot's happened in Tom's recent last 5 years of sobriety. He doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to hear about boxing gloves, boxing gyms. His poor son drives him nuts a little bit, but he's just uninterested. He's really proud of our past. He just wants to put it all behind us. And every time I invite him, I might even invite him to a fight at the casino. Who knows? He's like, I'm not even interested. He has lost his interest. Even on the few fights, I might have a pay-per-view 2-3 times a year at the house here. He's just not interested. But and it's surprising because he did love the sport. I think he's just fed up. But I am not. I'm still a lover of the sport. I always will be. Nothing could ever change that. I love the sport, the metaphor of boxing, and the way I speak on it the few times a year I'm on stage or addressing a group or a college or a school. I love that metaphor. It's too easy to use with life and encouragement and inspiration. So it's just it's great for where I'm at. I love the sport. I'll always watch it. I don't, as I've said 100 times, want to be around it on a day-to-day basis. I don't have a gym. I don't coach. I don't promote. I don't manage. I simply watch from an awesome distance from my chair or ringside if I'm fortunate enough, but I don't want to be involved with it on a day-to-day basis.
It's as we were speaking at the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight when we went to Amherst Pizza and Ale House and watched it there together. I think we had similar thoughts on that. And boxing used to be what I was known for as a journalist. I was president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. At the same time, you were #1 ranked heavyweight in the world. And it was I could tell you probably I could have a strong opinion, and maybe not an opinion, but I could tell you strengths and weaknesses or give you an analysis of the top 5 fighters, maybe top 10 in damn near every weight class, from straw weight all the way up. And I can't tell you who's in it now. And that's not just because of my lack of interest. It's how the sport has deteriorated. The the Olympic ranks, the Golden Gloves, guys turn pro faster. You don't learn their stories. We don't need, I guess we could go through the list, but everybody from George Foreman to Sugar Ray Leonard, Pernell Whitaker, Evander Holyfield, Muhammad Ali, all these people who came up through the Olympics as the way. That was how you did it. And you'd have 200 amateur fights. Now guys fight 10 times as an amateur, turn pro. You don't know their stories. And you're right. The metaphor, there's a reason boxing movies, as the sport is still falling apart, they're making boxing movies that win Academy Awards. Like, people are riveted by the symbolism of it. But Jake Paul.
No doubt they make great movies because they are true, inspiring, overcoming stories.
Right.
It's not a collegiate sport. I'm not going to, you can make a movie about Tom Brady. The kid was middle class and went to an awesome college, and there's tons of things. That's not exciting. Boxing movies are exciting because they've all come from the street, literally, and overcome a ton, and rightfully so. That's why the movies are interesting, So I agree with you there. I love the lifestyle of a fighter. I love a fighter's heart. I respect every fighter. I still do. But I think, like you mentioned, even I don't know. I couldn't even tell you who the welterweight champion is. That's one of the best divisions. I really couldn't tell you much about what's coming up, even in my own division, the heavyweight division. And I think that's everybody's view, because there really is, it always helps when there's a superstar, someone. I'm not saying there's not great fighters. There's really good fighters today. But I'm talking, that Evander Holyfield, that Mike Tyson, that Riddick Bowe. In the 80s, there was tons of them. And even in the early 2000s, you had De La Hoya and people you want, Felix Trinidad. There's people you wanted to tune in to see.
Mayweather,
Again,
Pacquiao.
I can't say it enough. There's great fighters today. There's no one that's really captivating a TV audience or even an in-person audience. Unless, again, you go to Dubai, and they might be a little more interested in it today. A lot of money flying around over there in the sport. With golf, with a lot of sports. They'll be starting their own NFL soon. But there's still some interest, but you have to credit the UFC. Everyone compares the two. I don't know why, but the UFC deserves all the credit in the world for doing what they're doing, because you can watch that 4 nights a week, not once a month like boxing, and find a decent fight 4 nights a week and be entertained with good talent.
Back in 2015, I did a story on the Mayweather Pacquiao fight leading up to it. And I went on a bit of a road trip. I went through Canastota, where the International Boxing Hall of Fame is. I went to Philadelphia I don't know. I thought I was going to find something. I just had a feeling I would. Philly being one of the all-time great fight towns. I went to the Rocky statue outside the the art museum. And sure enough, and it turned out, I think, to be the lead of my story. There was a group of kids on a school bus. They were on a trip, a history class on their summer trip, or no, it had to have been spring break. In these two big charter buses, and these kids unload, just get on, 12 to 15 years old, maybe, a group of parent chaperones, and they run the steps. They knew what it meant to run the steps. So they knew Rocky, they knew the statue. These were young kids. And I found a couple of the adults and I said, hey, I'm a reporter with the Buffalo News. I'm doing a story on boxing and the state of boxing. When the kids get done posing for their pictures with Rocky statue, you mind if I ask them a question? They're like, no, this would be great. And I said, can anybody tell me who the heavyweight champion of the world is? And there were 80 between the two buses. I think there was a combined 80 people. And I think 8 to 10 of them were adults. Nobody could name the heavyweight champion of the world. And one kid ventured a guess of Floyd Mayweather, who was a champion at the time, but as a lightweight or whatever he was. Well, yeah.
Guess.
So he got a name, but it was like, man. And part of that trip, and this is a little long wind up, but part of that trip, I stopped in Easton, Pennsylvania at his bar, and I met with Larry Holmes. And we went through the I don't know if it was WBA or WBC, whatever he was the main champion of. I think he was a WBA guy.
I think so, back then, yeah.
And I said, let's go through the top 15 of the heavyweight division and tell me what you think of this guy. We started at 15 and went to number 1. He had heard of 2 of them. So this is a former undisputed heavyweight champion of the world in the organization that he used to represent. Couldn't even tell you. And then I get to the Mayweather fight, and we're in a little bit of a gaggle. And Floyd Mayweather's talking about how he bets on everything. He's an obnoxiously large scale gambler, sports bettor. And he says he refuses to bet on boxing because he doesn't know the fighters. Floyd Mayweather's a promoter. So it was like, what the heck is it was just one thing after another. And so that's why we get to, I think, Jake Paul, ranked 14th in the world now in the WBA. What are your thoughts on, not just that part of it, but how we get to that? How do we get to Jake Paul being ranked? Whereas not that long ago, people wouldn't even be watching it because it's such a joke. Now it is almost the nucleus of the sport.
We joked before we hit record, and it says doesn't make me feel confident of my rankings years ago. Kind of true, but I know in my heart that there's so little action, there's so little going on that it's sad. It's sad. It saddens me, and it saddens me that the fights that bring us to the screen or bring us to the auditorium are Tyson at age 60 and Jake Paul, the so-called YouTuber, which I'll elaborate on in a minute, but and people teasing, a year ago, De La Hoya was teasing at 52 to do it. No, it's not, shouldn't have to do that. But, then again, on the other side of it all, the WBA is not stupid. They know the only money left, it seems to be, is Jake Paul. I was scrolling through the Instagram and I saw a couple of major fights that Ring Magazine is posting. These are summer fights. And the best thing, Usyk is the heavyweight champion. He's going to fight Daniel Dubois, who I happen to have studied. And I think at my best, I could have beat Dubois. I do like Usyk. I think he's fantastic. But still is a non-speaking, barely speaking English champion that not many people follow. And the fight on the list was the girl fight, was Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, that are names you'd have to really be involved with boxing to know. I want to see that rematch, the women. Other than that, I don't know who Cruz and Fierro are, and Catterall and Eubank and Taylor. I don't know who these people are that they're promoting these major fights. So the WBA has to do what they have to do. You have to do what you got to do. You got to rank a guy and make some money out of it. Now, having said that, I defend Jake Paul in the sense that people call him a YouTuber. I've said this before too. It's been many years now that he's been training in the boxing ring, and he's a very athletic, young, youthful, talented. This guy has the best training equipment. He has great trainers. He's got chefs. he has more access to services regular fighters don't have. Not to mention he's in his prime, and he and Logan are Logan especially. If you watch the WWE, he is so good at what he does, and these guys are incredible athletes. I think that they're real fighters. I mean, Jake's a real fighter. Does he deserve to be 14 or in the top 10? No, he does not. But what are you going to do? I mean, that's who people want to see. You want to see Jake Paul. They don't want to see Berlagna and Shiraz on July 12th. They're promoting. I just printed this up. They don't want to see Catterall and Eubank July 5th. They don't want to see that. I know they're promoting it and they're doing their best. I don't want to see it. I'm a boxing fan. But when Jake Paul comes on, I didn't get this fight, but I probably won't get the next one. But again, I'm more inclined to do that than order these. So I get what the WBA is doing, and it makes me think, listen, I wasn't the best fighter, but I drew some people. So I kind of understood what they were doing back then too. So it's all business.
What's your take on the ranking system? The 4 big ones, when we grew up, it was 3 big ones, and then they added the WBO kind of because it was more Eurocentric, and they did seem to know more about the fighters that weren't in the United States than the other 3 organizations did. The IBF went through federal courts as being highly corrupt. So you had the IBF, the WBC, the WBA, and the WBO. So those are the 4. You were number 1 in the WBC, which I think is considered at different times. They go in different ways, I think, based on what's going on.
Very true.
But the WBC is the tridest and truest of, that's Ali was, the WBC guy, and it's, whatever. I mean, we don't need to get into the whole thing, but you were number 1 in one of them. And then at any given time, you would be in the double digits, maybe in some of the other ones. How do you square that? Or why does that happen? Because these are all supposedly smart boxing analysts that are looking at these fighters, but why do you think that is, that they're so out of whack? Or I should say inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that it's who you know, where you are, who you're with, in collaboration, how many tickets were sold, what city do you sell those tickets in? I think a lot is taken into consideration. Who's your trainer? Who's your manager? Have you supported us in one way or another? I don't know. There is no rhyme or reason to the rankings. There never really has been. They're close. They're not really close enough, but again, that's another reason why not only the health and safety issues, but the ranking disparity. There needs to be one organization, like a national or international organization, much like every other professional sport has, and wouldn't exist without. But boxing is still the one, and that's why I'm not really close to the business in that sense, because it's run by organizations, and it's run by commissions, and it's run by promoters. Well, those 3 don't all see eye to eye. They kind of make up the rules as they go along. We'll kind of let this bend and let this go. There is no organization. This is not a collegiate, like I mentioned before. So, I mean, we can go into the topic, how many fighters have known on documentation fought with a brain bleed. Many have since 2004. But I didn't, so I mean, that's just one case, not to start a can of worms, but they make up rules as they go along. There's no real guidance or oversight over a lot of things in the sport of boxing.
I reached out, by the way, I said I had a hard out at 4:00. I have an extra few minutes here, so we can extend if you're okay with that.
Go ahead.
Jonah, we haven't, I don't want to box you out here, or let's have a 3-man ring here.
Well, okay, if we have some time, I do want to ask Joe a little bit. From my understanding, Tim, when you were writing in the Buffalo News, you kind of coined that moniker, the 3rd franchise, and that took off is a bit of a marketing. I think a lot of people in Buffalo really that resonated. They really did consider Joe the third franchise in Buffalo during his boxing career. I'm wondering, you know, what Joe's perspective on that is, being the third franchise and being called that, and what that was like. And then we've had discussions over the years on this podcast about who is now the third franchise, and you still live here and from here. You know, what do you think about who's kind of picked up that, or what
I
team?
think that's one of the coolest nicknames that anyone could ever come up with. I think it's great. I think, and look, at 2000 to 2004, 5, that was maybe warranted. It was fun. It was awesome. I love the fact that people still, from time to time, refer to it and think it's great. Once in a while, you get a shout out of it. You know, if I go to a Bills or Bison's or whatever, but and it's great. I love it. First thing, if someone should my sales team, I'm in sales now, they all call me that and refer to me that, because if you hit the Google, it's one of the first things that comes up. So I'm grateful
I don't
for
think I
that
get
nickname.
it. Kind of was in the ether. So I did use it, but not in the Buffalo News. I used it in a magazine article back, the Ring magazine. I used to write for Ring, KO, and then they had a third publication called World Boxing or something like that. Or anyways, one of those magazines is where they asked me to do a feature on Joe Mesi, and that was the premise of the story. Was this guy is the third franchise. And the very next fight, I'm covering it. I'm sitting ringside, and Joe gets in, and it's on his trunks. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Well, thank you, Tim, because I think, I joke a lot. I still love that people bring it up and mention it. It comes up a lot. Being 2025, I think I've been demoted to the 11th. I'm right behind Lou Gehrig, Little League right now. So I don't know. I'm not keeping track, but I still like that people refer to it.
You're ahead of Buffalo Pro Soccer.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. A lot of people say rightfully so the Bandits should be. Maybe they should be, because they're a pretty damn good team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But we've talked about, the Bandits, the Bisons, University of Buffalo basketball when they were really going, Jessica Pagula, when she's kind of, reached the heights that she has in her career. But it's fun. I think people really liked that nickname in that era. And then I think people have some fun trying to figure out who, because it can be different in different years and different times of year. And then there's
right
really
now
no
it's the
obvious
Sabres.
answer. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm ahead of the Sabres, but I don't know. Listen, what's great about it is that it kind of stuck. I don't care whoever is the third franchise today, but I like that people refer to it as me. And it's almost, in a sense, opened my eyes after 2004 and 5. Like, it's given me, I feel like, no, I'm not a politician. I'm not even a professional athlete. I'm an ambassador of this city, and I still like that nickname stuck with me. And I have to represent this city. I have to keep my head up high. I have to be proud of this city in Western New York. I owe them. They made my career the success that it was. So it gives me that kind of, I get that title of ambassador of the city, and I always will be. So I think it's because of that nickname that, kind of keeps me on the up and up, and as a face of the city and a representation.
I think on this podcast, we'll call you the third F.
The third F. That's great.
Did you know that the Buffalo News, the nickname Baby Joe is a headline writer's dream, although Joe Mesi is actually shorter than Baby Joe, but to put Baby Joe succinctly in a headline and save you the characters, because back in the newspaper days, you had to fit it.
The ink.
Right? And you didn't want it to break over, and it had to look a certain way. And so Baby Joe is a headline writer's dream. But at the Buffalo News, well into your career, we had an editor who didn't like it. And I don't remember who it was. It was like high up. It wasn't in the sports department. And it said, we are no longer allowed to call you Baby Joe, because it was there. I think they thought it was like making you to be like
too much ink.
No, it was because it was like, it's a little kid. Like, he's not like Baby Joe. And I know the name came from your mom. I mean, the story behind Baby Joe was great, but it was just funny. Like, it gave this particular editor gave him the creeps. And so we weren't allowed to call you Baby Joe
I guess because growing up, I was Baby Joe. So that's where the quotations would come in, Baby Joe.
Right.
Or Baby Joe quotations Mesi. I think I used to laugh when people would baby in quotations, as if baby was my nickname, because I laugh because this happens often. and there was pumping gas, and my wife's getting in the car, and some guy goes, "Baby," and like, I'm like, I'm looking behind me, like, and I'm like, what is he? See an attractive woman? Like, what? And I go, oh my god, he's something. I was like laughing. My wife's laughing because he's talking to you. I'm like, I don't never remember me calling baby, but I think that incorrect
Not
quotation
in public
placement
anyway.
screwed people up. And, no, so
36
no,
and 0, 29 knockouts. Do you have okay? So I mean, seven of your fights did not end in a knockout. Is there one that got away? Is there one that haunts you that you didn't finish early?
I can't remember who I didn't knock out, to be honest with you. I can't remember those guys. No, often the most talked about is Giroff, obviously. And I look at that performance as I studied his previous fights and what a badass he really was. Um, I thought I did pretty good except for the last 2 rounds. So, except round 1, round 9, and round 10. So I'm kind of proud of that fight because he's probably the truest opponent, toughest opponent. The DeVero Williamson one was just fun or funny, if you will. So I think the only one that I'm not disappointed by, but I'm actually proud of would be Jurov, considering I was terrible against southpaws. So
The DeVero Williamson fight, I was at the arena and I had seats way at the very top, back wall, and we got in to the arena floor when you were making your entrance, and that fight was over before we walked up to our seats. By the time you walked to the ring and put him away.
If you're asking for a refund, you're not getting it. But yeah, that was a great night. You know why it was a great night? Because I don't think people understand the history that DeBarrel and I had. That's what makes it special to me. And it's a terrible thing because I'm friendly with most of I haven't really spoken to DeBarrel. I try to reach out to him. I think he's pretty upset. But we were very close, and he kind of he taught me everything I needed to know in the amateur days when he got on the U.S. team, and he was kind of a little more experienced than I was, and we were sparring together, and he was beating me up pretty good in the 90s. And he was like the established guy, and I was the newcomer, and he was always tough sparring for me. But then it became 97, 98, 99, and we're doing our own thing in the pros, and people don't know this. Like I had my great trainers, thank God for them, and I'm progressing and I'm learning. I was very active at the beginning, and I needed to be because I didn't have that amateur experience really, like the Barrel did, 300, 400 fights. So I'm learning, and I'm watching myself learn and be different each fight. But the Barrel and other heavyweights, same. They're winning, same. They're just the same guys they were in 97. They're the same guys they were in 94. They're the same. Not saying they're not good. I'm just saying they're the same. I'm a different guy every time I'm showing up in the ring. I credit my trainers for that. I had to be because I didn't have any natural ability like they did, but I was always different. So it's funny when I signed that fight, I'm like, and I've been watching DeVarrell. I studied film. I had to study film. I'm watching it. I'm like, DeVarrell is the same exact fighter from when he used to knock me down sparring in 1996, 95. Now it's 2004. He still thinks he's getting the same Joe Mesi, but he's not. I don't care what film he watches. So that was special to me. You know what I mean? Because I looked up to that kid, man. He whooped my butt in the gym all the time. So it's kind of a fun story to share. He didn't like it though.
I'll
He
never
came to
forget
that
that
ring
fight.
very, very confident.
It was if it wasn't a great fight, it was a great event. The buzz around that and how many people showed up at the arena. And I'll never forget his nickname, Touch of Sleep. It was, I think, one of the best nicknames
He's
I've
doing pretty
heard.
well. He's got a very successful gym in Colorado. He promotes fights from now and then. He raises. I mean, his business is doing well. I don't know what his health, but
He
he's doing pretty
lost
well.
that fight on his way to the ring because of that crowd that night. And I'm not saying you didn't do it, but
Yeah,
that crowd was with you and he knew it. Like it was,
yeah.
and obviously it's your hometown, but that was a raucous event. And he looked, like he was stiff, heading into the
One of
ring.
my other,
His
I
knees were
think
knocking a little bit.
I agree. And the Davis fight, I also like. I probably like the Davis fight because you know what I like the most about that? That was Father's Day weekend. And I remember telling my dad, I go, Dad, don't please, not on a holiday. No, please don't schedule this fight. It's Father's Day weekend. No, Joe, it's going to be great. This is why it's going to be great. I go, don't do that. I mean, we have a rule. We don't Memorial Days. We don't do that. But every day I'm out in the community, every week I'll say, someone stops me and says, hey, my dad's not with me anymore, but I'll tell you, man, we had a great weekend. We went, we shared some beers, went to that fight, and I was like, wow. I hear that all the time. More about DeBarrel than anything about men. One of my best memories, my latest memories with my dad was that weekend. Me and him went to the fight. So that was kind of special to me too.
It's a shame, and that is another indicator of where boxing's fallen, because my dad and I used to love to watch the fights together. He didn't tell me this until very late in life, but he was very humble when it came to his accolades. I didn't realize it until I was in my 30s, maybe, that this guy was a superstar basketball in Indiana, which at the time, but he was a high school dropout. He came from a busted home. Like, he was not going to go to college on this, but in a different world, this guy's special. And he grew up Catholic at a time when your altar boy, or at least in this parish, the priest took the altar boys to box. You'd learn how to box. So he grew up in southern Indiana on the other side of the Ohio River, and they used to go into Louisville to box. And they used to go in and box with this kid named Cassius Clay, but he was special, and you got to take it, don't be the white trash kid from the other, don't go in there and, stick your thumb in his eye or do anything stupid. And so my dad, he just said it like matter of factly one day, without even making eye contact.
God, we're
staring at the TV, and I've looked at him like, what? And I'm probably, I'm well into my 40s by the time he tells me this. I've been covering boxing. I'd lived in Las Vegas for 5 years. I'd met Ali myself a couple of times, and he's just kind of like, yeah, he's like, yeah, it's just whatever. We did that. All us altar boys used to go in there, and I think they kind of were like the sparring partners. They'd like roll the altar boys through, and he'd get his workout.
But to nonchalantly offer that to you, when that would be a highlight in most people's lives, that would be a highlight.
I'm sure it was for him too.
I'm sure.
But for whatever reason, he just. Anyways,
yeah.
I don't know where I was going. Full fathers and sons. I would never think. I mean, maybe you're different because of your, you can see behind you. For those who are watching on YouTube, all the accolades and the trophies and the gloves and the belt behind you. I mean, you come from a boxing family, obviously, but I wouldn't think to take my son to a boxing match, like to go up to Seneca, Niagara for a night of the fights. I think that kind of stopped with maybe my generation-ish. Like, boxing didn't carry over like that. I take my son to a UB basketball game, all these things, but that cool thing of going to a Father's Day with your fight, to me, that's like Americana.
I see what you're saying.
It makes sense. What happened that night with you fighting on Father's Day, in retrospect, makes sense. Like, your initial thought was
the beginning of the end.
But it was like, but it was kind of like, we wouldn't do that again, would we?
I don't see it. Every blue moon, maybe twice a year, I go as a guest, and they're very nice to me. They Senecas and give me a room and dinner, and we go watch the fights with my wife. And not something I bring my son or daughter to. I don't. And I don't see that in the audience, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't see that in the audience. No, very, very, very little. You're right by that. It's not a thing.
Do you have a son that's in boxing, or is that a nephew?
I have a son who is turning 13 in 2 weeks, because he's counting the days down, and he's a unique 13-year-old. He enjoys Saturdays when we go to Box Star, and he does a little workout with his friends to stay active. He is not interested in the sport. He's not interested in sports at all, but he does love his swim and bowling and boxing, and he does get his share of exercise, but no, he's not really into it. I don't think he understands it, and certainly doesn't like violence.
What if he did? What would your thought be on?
I wouldn't say, as I tell most parents, I have this discussion a lot in the weirdest places, the post office. And I would never detour my son or daughter from anything that they're interested in or want to pursue. My parents didn't. I didn't say they loved what I did. It wasn't my mom's choice. I wouldn't say it was my dad's first choice either, but they didn't pursue, they didn't push me aside and say, let's do something else, or you can't do it, or you're not going to make it. So I think and I would happily educate them to what they're getting into, but I would never detour them from what they want to do if that was their passion.
Do you call your son Baby Joe, or is he Grandbaby Joe?
No, that stopped at me. But he's Joseph. He prefers Joseph. But I will tell you, I'm waiting for my phone to ring. My daughter, my stepdaughter. So I'll be a grandpa probably in the next 48 hours. So my
Wow.
wife and I will be grandparents. So I'm
Congratulations.
waiting. It's my stepdaughter who's pregnant. So it'll be a fun weekend.
Grandpa Joe.
Yeah, that's right. No more Baby Joe, Grandpa Joe.
Baby Joe, and then just Joe, or Daddy Joe? What's in between Baby Joe and Grandpa Joe? A
I
lot
don't
of
know. I think
miles.
a lot. Yeah, it's a long time. I don't know. I don't know what it'll be called.
You mentioned the Jirov fight. I know we're bouncing around here a little bit. And we're going to wrap up, but you mentioned that
It's okay.
Jirov fight being your proudest moment. I was thinking about this last night. Once you'd said that you'd be able to join me today, some of the things I was going to ask you, but we got to it before I could ask you. I was going to ask you what your proudest fight was, or your favorite, and that was you at your best. And I know that was you at your most vulnerable, and probably in some ways the worst night of your career. But that was you at your most valiant. I mean, that was
Also,
you
also
getting off
maybe a
the mat.
blessing. Maybe a blessing in my career. But go ahead.
No, I think
interrupted
it's
something
just
great.
the point. I think it was valiant. It was admirable. It was all those things. And I think it answered a lot of the questions of people that had of you of, does this guy have what it takes? And that was and it's a shame that
I'm
it happened
happy. I'm happy I got to show that I got knocked down. I mean, I got knocked down a lot. I always knew that about myself. It wouldn't have been talent that brought me a long way in this sport. It was not going to be talent. It was going to be my will. I endure and don't mind pain. I don't mind getting punched, and I don't quit. Not saying I can't be beat or can't be knocked out. I'm just saying you get to know fighters, and I've sparred hundreds and hundreds of heavyweights, and some better than others. But I could tell immediately by round three who's got what it takes, who's got heart, who's going to take. You know what I mean? And it's like I always say, Evander Holyfield was one of those great fighters who got better when he was hurt. And I didn't mind being hurt. I didn't mind being down. I'm going to get up. And I got to show that a little bit. Um, so it's not always about the win, but I want to be able to show that I'm willing to get up. And a lot of guys get knocked down and it's just over for them, but they have a lot more in the tank.
Well, Joe, this has been a blessing. Thank you
Yes, I
for
agree.
joining the show, and get back to monitoring your phone. When you said you were waiting for a phone call, I'm like, oh, we better wrap it up. But you might have a long wait ahead of you.
We would probably do. Yeah.
So if you're going to be a grandpa for the first time, ergo, this is her first. So the first one, you might be, even once you get started, it might be a couple days.
Right. I know. We're in for a long weekend, I think.
Well, have a good one. Hopefully you can relax a little bit and enjoy your holiday weekend. And thanks for being an F.
You too, man. Happy 4th, man. Thanks for having me on. Good talking to you guys.
Thanks to everybody out
Jonah.
there for watching and for listening to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.